Despite wildfires wiping entire communities off the map, the Doug Ford Conservative government has made no attempt of getting in touch with Lise Vaugeois, the MPP for Thunderbay North Superior. Today, I have her on to discuss the ongoing wildfires that are affecting North Ontario, how the wildfire severity was a predictable consequence of the Doug Ford Conservative government ignoring recommendations, and how it all fits into a pattern which routinely disregards the well-being of Indigenous communities in Ontario. Welcome to Toronto the Politics, the show. My name's Christopher Chiasson. Lise Vaugeois, MPP for Thunderbay Superior North, thank you so much for making the time to speak with me today. Lise, just off the top, I know it's probably been a pretty difficult past week for you. How are you feeling?
You know, I've been talking with people who have been evacuated. It's really heartbreaking. You know, I have a home to come back to, so I can listen to those stories and feel very, very emotional, but I still have a home to come back to. They don't. It's never been as bad as it is right now. What I can say is that every summer, one or two or several First Nations are forcibly evacuated because the fires have come too close and the smoke is too close. Those First Nations have been further north. This year is different because the people who are being evacuated are much closer to Thunder Bay, and also the communities have been entirely wiped out. In my memory, in spite of communities being evacuated, I have no memory of a community being wiped out before. So this is a level of an emergency and a level of harm that I don't think that we have seen before. So Collins First Nation is gone. It's completely gone. They had no warning. They escaped by jumping into boats. And it was a young man who actually went back and forth to fetch people in his boat and to fetch whatever animals they could get. They're unfortunately animals who've been left behind. People are grieving that as well. White Sand and Armstrong are almost one community, and they've been evacuated, and they are staying at. There are enough people coming from those communities. It takes up two complete hotels. It's become acceptable. It's like this is normal summer news, but it's not acceptable. Nobody should be forced to evacuate. This shouldn't be normal, that we just accept that evacuations take place because of forest fires.
How many people have been evacuated?
I haven't been able to get exact numbers.
And that's another problem, but we can get more into that.
It is a problem. We don't know.
Can I ask, I know when you were speaking with Breakfast Television a couple of days ago, you were having difficulty getting in touch. Would it be the Ministry of Emergencies? Would that be the...
Right, emergency preparedness.
Yeah, have you been able to establish a line of communication still after all this time, even with that news? Wow.
Yeah, I was really hoping that, honestly, that they would reach out.
That's astonishing to me.
Yeah, it is to me too. It's I'm the elected representative. Mm-hmm. It should not matter what party I belong to. I have a responsibility to the people who've been evacuated.
And I'm sure you have the capabilities and the network to provide assistance in that on-the-ground context that might be lacking from a government that doesn't have the representation there. What would you wish you were seeing? Like, what if you were able to have that direct line of communication? What would be the things you would hope to communicate?
Well, first of all, if I talk about what happened in Gull Bay, for example, they got somebody on the phone, and that person said, "Well, why don't you drive north?" You know, the chief of Gull Bay was saying, "Well, where should we go? Where are we going to go? Where is it safe to go?" The person speaking with them had absolutely no idea where Gull Bay is. So they said, "Well, why don't you drive north?" Well, north the fire is and the highway is closed. Obviously, then that breaks any confidence that the communities have in the information that the people they're talking to, who are supposed to be providing them guidance on where to go, how to get out safely, and so on. All of these communities, I'm going to say, including ones that are outside of my riding, Lac First Nation and communities around there, are gone, completely wiped out. And the story is the same every time that they checked with the MNR earlier on. Some reported the fires as early as the end of June. And the message was, "You're okay. You're okay so far. Don't worry. You don't need to evacuate." And then when the fire was so close, there was no message. Get out. They had to figure that out themselves. And so somewhere along the line, there's been an enormous communication gap.
And it seems like a common theme where it is, specifically indigenous communities where these communication gaps are occurring. And it doesn't seem like a novel problem, but it seems like something that is ongoing every season that doesn't feel like it's ever remedied.
Yeah. And what is different again this time that maybe will cause more of a ruckus is that white communities are also being wiped out.
And what a shame
And
is that that's what it takes, right?
well, yes. So as I say, communities have had to evacuate year after year.
Mm-hmm.
It's traumatic. It's not a party,
No.
right? To be ripped out of your home, go somewhere, stay in a hotel. Sometimes you'll see racist comments online that say, you did this on purpose so you could come to town. Apart from being racist, it is just does not comprehend how traumatic it is to be forcibly evacuated. It's as if there's a kind of othering that takes place.
What comes next for families that have been displaced?
They don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know.
There's no plan. There's no idea of a plan.
There's no. I mean, I will say that those First Nations that have been wiped out, and another one called Whitewater, they are saying they are resilient. They will not give up. They are going back. They will rebuild their communities, whatever it takes. However, they should be supported. The money needs to be there.
Lise, can I ask, what do you think could have been done before this season to have mitigated the severity of the wildfires?
So there are a number of things that need to happen. In 2022, there was an Auditor General's report, and wildland firefighters made a presentation and said, look, we are not ready. We are not building the capacity to do what's needed. Volunteer firefighters, so we have all of these unincorporated communities are largely serviced by volunteer firefighter teams. They've been told, you need to get ready, you need to get wildland firefighter equipment. But there's no budget. There's like, go raise the money and get this equipment, as if they're supposed to be the ones who are going to step in when the MNRF doesn't have the equipment and people they need. We need 200 teams. We have maybe 160, 165. We didn't have enough last year. We don't have enough this year. There are pay problems. Pilots are going to other jurisdictions that pay better.
You mentioned that there were some morale problems amongst firefighters and emergency crews. Can you tell me about that?
I don't want to suggest that the people who are there aren't competent, right? They are working to their absolute maximum, but they have been steadily losing senior people. They're still not being called firefighters, which is something I'll say that the Minister of Labor promised us. It's in Hansard. He would do 2 years ago. It has not been done.
Sorry, I don't think I know about this. Could you tell me more?
Sure.
So those that are currently there are not. Does that
so they're
provide
actually
certain protections?
They're actually technicians, forest technicians, or something like that. They're not classified as firefighters, right? So they don't get the same kind of benefits. They don't get the same kind of pay as they would if they were firefighters. So that is an issue, and it was supposed to be resolved. It's not been resolved. There's a kind of fiddling around the edges that does not actually address that issue. The other really huge piece is preventative work. So I believe it was during the previous Conservative Mike Harris government that they got rid of a year-long firefighters. Okay, so that it used to be a job, not just a summer job or a 5-month or 6-month job. It was a real job that went over the whole year and presumably had benefits and something you could make a career out of.
It sounds like this is the kind of issue that presents when you don't have permanent staff who are looking after this area, that there's a lot of institutional knowledge that must be lost because many people find other employment opportunities, they move on, and there must be a million of these small little equipment failures that occur, but because you don't have someone minding the shop, there's not an effective advocate necessarily for some of these fixes to be put forward.
And what we haven't talked about is climate change. So the temperature has risen. Even if the average temperature has risen even only a half a degree, it makes an enormous amount of difference. Winds are higher, faster, more intense. It's been extremely hot here, unusually so. The forest is dried out. Has it always been this dry? We need to ask the people on the ground.
Do you feel like the Ford government is taking climate change seriously?
No, I don't think they believe in it.
That do you think they consciously don't believe it, or it's like just a political lie that they're trying to tell? I guess it's you can't quite look into their soul. Yeah.
I can't know. I mean, their big deal is that, they're putting most of their eggs into nuclear energy.
I couldn't help but wonder if Ford might be reticent to even talk, put effort and attention towards the wildfires because of the timing with the pipeline deal with Alberta, and whether that might, produce sort of an uncomfortable dynamic for him, that it's better just to shy away, or else he has to, have people ask some hard questions about whether the province is really taking this seriously.
I'm pretty sure his caucus has been directed never to use those words.
And it feels like this is something that we're seeing amongst a lot of, even in the federal liberals. It seems like climate change has ceased to be as much of a priority, even while we're seeing these, natural weather disasters being exacerbated by a rising climate.
I think I heard an interview with somebody who was driving across the country and, came from BC wildfires, and then a tornado area, and then a flooding area, and then hitting this area here where there are wildfires and evacuations and closed highways. It was a real picture of extreme weather events that if you talk to insurance companies, they're very clear that these events are taking place and that people are becoming uninsurable because the events are so massive and affect so many people. That's a piece of this, right? That the fires are so extreme. I'm a kayaker. I haven't been able to do much since I was elected, but I really feel the difference, even in town and on the water, how quickly the winds come up and how intense they are. And that makes a big difference with fires. Now, this is me, right? So is that anecdotal? There's an element of that's anecdotal.
When you have a lot of anecdotes, you get a data set. And I think
you do after a while. And when you see how quickly these fires have moved, and I think that they have they've taken people by surprise, but I'll say they have not taken those experienced firefighters by surprise, because they've been saying this for a long time.
How do you think we get, because, you can't help but feel a sort of despair when, our smoke is when our sun is being clouded out with smoke. We can't go outside. I recently got back into running, and I feel like I might as well just start smoking cigarettes again. If this doesn't make people care in Toronto, if you don't literally start to see smoke coming in, you almost feel like, well, what is it going to take? Is it going to take your house getting burned? I was spending time with my parents this weekend, and they're in the kind of the Burlington area, and we had a tornado warning come through. That had never occurred. Shocking to me. And again, it's I think we're all feeling these little moments, and we're feeling like these incidences are happening more often, and yet the urgency just isn't there. What do you think it's going to take for people to recognize that, or, actual changes to how we produce our energy, or, how we consume energy? What do you think it's going to take?
I wish I could say.
How do we solve climate change, Lise?
How do we solve climate change? I mean, first we have to agree that it matters and that we can't continue business as usual. The science has been quite clear. We need to reduce the use of fossil fuels. We shouldn't be expanding that use. I can't see the justification for more pipelines when we are where we are. The repercussions are all around us. people are losing, they're not just losing their livelihoods, which they are, but they're losing their living, their ability to make a living with the lodges that are gone, and the ability to live, period, to have a home, to know that you can live anywhere, right? Without this risk of losing everything.
And especially at a time where solar and wind has become competitive with fossil fuel production economically. Solar plants are winning competitive contracts with municipalities all over the world, not because of any sort of focus on renewable or, hippie green energy, but because it makes economic sense, because it's the better way to produce. I think, the answer for why, I won't necessarily ask you to comment on this, but I think the answer for why so many governments continue to embrace fossil fuels is because, fossil fuel production is the kind of energy production which is the most effective for private business to become cozy with government. And the issue with renewables is that it's a much more accessible means of energy production. It's harder for one corporation to establish a monopoly that allows them to get very cozy in bed with elected leaders. That when we instead pursue renewables, when we pursue wind energy, you find yourself in less of a kleptocracy, where a couple of firms are able to control the destiny of a country, of a region. And, I think you see this in Alberta with the cozy relationship between Daniel Smith and energy companies. And I think we're seeing this increasingly in Ontario with Ford seeming to have little interest pursuing any sort of economic project unless he happens to have a friend or a donor who is going to be receiving some sort of financial reward from it. Closing out here, Lise.
Sure. I do have one more
please,
thing.
If you want to respond to that,
if there's time. Well, yeah. So we've seen, I'll call it corruption. We've seen an enormous amount of corruption in Ontario with this government, and as you said, the money's going to projects that seem to be direct donors to the Conservative Party. Mm-hmm. They are not necessarily accessible or of benefit to the majority population. I want to point out that people who have lost their homes and First Nations who've been going through these risks year after year are asking whether they aren't sacrifice zones. When I say a sacrifice zone, it's just okay if they disappear, because then it's less of a headache for governments that want to extract resources. They can't extract resources if people are living there and demanding their rights. Am I taking this too far? I'm repeating what people are saying to me, that they have that level of distrust in what our governments are doing and how they have historically treated First Nations and how they continue to treat them now. They make deals when they have to. If they don't have to, that might be just fine. I'll put a bracket around that. Is it being overly cynical? For those who've lived that history, it seems like reality.
When Indigenous communities are the greatest protectors and advocates of our natural land, and the government seems to have an interest of taking advantage of the natural resources located somewhere, you can't help but wonder if that is lurking in the back of their mind when they're not allocating the resources needed to protect those people.
I think Mike Harris Jr. was here, and apparently during the press conference, he started talking about mining. And I thought, well, that's what you'd call a Freudian slip.
Yeah.
Because certainly nobody right now has any interest in talking about mining in these communities.
Well, Lise, thanks so much for coming on the show today. It's difficult to look at the news right now and feel optimism, but I appreciate that the residents of Thunder Bay and of Northwest Ontario generally have you as an advocate. And I hope that some more people can get some eyeballs on what's happening right now, including those who might not currently be as affected as those communities, up north are currently, because, I think, if you're not willing to speak up for those who are being affected by a catastrophe today, then, it's unlikely that anyone's going to speak up for you when a catastrophe affects you. Yeah. Thank you very much to Lise Vaugeois for coming onto the show today. If you are interested in supporting any of the communities that have been affected by these wildfires, you can go to whitesandfirstnation.com or the United Way of Thunder Bay. Both of those websites will be in the description linked. I've been your host, Christopher Chiasson. Please be nice to each other.